So what if the cause of your brain fog and constant stomach problems wasn't what you or even your doctors thought it was? Today, we're jumping into a medical mystery that starts with some really common symptoms, but ends with a diagnosis that might affect millions. Let's dive in. Okay, just imagine feeling sick for 2 whole years. But the worst part of it all isn't physical pain. For the 36-year-old woman in our story, the thing that was truly derailing her life was a constant foggy brain. And we're not just talking about being a little tired. This was a daily, grinding struggle with memory and focus. But that mental fog, well, that was just the tip of the iceberg. It came with a whole collection of other physical symptoms that created a truly baffling medical puzzle. On top of the brain fog, she was dealing with a whole lot more. We're talking about diarrhea happening almost every single day, painful cramping after she ate, bloating, and gas. And if that wasn't enough, she also had these muscle and joint aches that would come and go. It was this whole mix of seemingly unrelated problems that made her case so incredibly tough to figure out. So after trying to cut out things like dairy and other foods without any luck, she basically had to become a detective in her own medical case. She started hunting for a pattern, and that's when she stumbled onto a huge clue.
And what she found was honestly incredible. The pattern was crystal clear. When she stopped eating things with gluten like bread, her symptoms, from the stomach issues all the way to the brain fog, got so much better. But the second she ate gluten again, bam, everything came rushing right back. This was the breakthrough everyone was looking for.
With a smoking gun pointing directly at gluten, her doctors immediately thought, okay, this has to be celiac disease. It's the most famous gluten-related problem in autoimmune disorder, so it was the obvious first place to look. They ran all the usual tests.
But this is where the mystery just got deeper. Every single test came back negative. The blood work for celiac antibodies? Nope. Her physical exam? Totally normal. They even did an endoscopy, putting a camera down to look at her small intestine, and they found 0 of the damage that's the classic sign of celiac disease. The investigation hit a complete dead end.
All right, let's just pause here for a second. The #1 suspect, celiac disease, is officially off the table. And yet the symptoms were absolutely real, and that connection to gluten, it was undeniable. So that left everyone asking the same massive question. What in the world was going on?
Well, the answer is a condition that, for a long time, has kind of flown under the radar, but now doctors are recognizing it more and more as its own distinct medical problem.
The final diagnosis was non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS, and the key is right there in the name. It's a condition that's really defined by what it isn't. It's not the autoimmune attack of celiac disease, and it's not the fast allergic reaction of a wheat allergy. It lives in this unique space right in between. One of the biggest clues here is the timing. NCGS symptoms tend to show up way faster than celiac. We're talking hours to maybe a couple of days after eating gluten. And crucially, NCGS is famous for causing these extra-intestinal symptoms, problems outside the gut. This perfectly explains the brain fog, the headaches, and the joint pain our patient was feeling. So to really get this, it helps a ton to see all 3 of these gluten-related conditions laid out side by side. Let's really break down what makes each one different.
Okay, so think of it like this. You have 3 different players on the field. First, you've got wheat allergy. That's a classic, full-blown allergic reaction. It's super fast, think hives, swelling, that kind of thing. Then you've got celiac disease. That's an autoimmune disease where your body's own defense team mistakenly attacks your small intestine, causing real damage over time. And then there's NCGS. This one involves what's called the innate immune system, your body's general first-line defenders. It causes inflammation, but it's not that specific, targeted attack you see in celiac, and it's not a major allergy.
All right, so we've cracked the case for our patient, but now let's zoom out, because this story is way bigger than just one person. It really matters to a lot of us today. You kind of have to ask, why are we hearing so much about this stuff now? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is our modern diet. In just the last 50 years, because of changes in farming and because gluten is a cheap additive, the amount of it we eat has shot up, 4 times higher. We are just eating way more gluten than ever before. And that might explain why NCGS is thought to be so much more common than celiac disease. While celiac affects maybe 1 to 3% of people, some studies estimate that NCGS could be affecting as many as 13% of the population. That is a massive difference. Naturally, This has created a gigantic industry. You've got about a third of all Americans actively trying to eat less gluten, and that's driving a multi-billion-dollar market for all those gluten-free products you see on the shelves.
But this right here creates a huge challenge for doctors. You have this condition with no simple blood test, no easy marker, and with symptoms that could be a million other things. So how do you accurately diagnose it and separate a real medical condition from, just a dietary trend?
The answer is a really rigorous scientific process called the Salerno criteria. This is how you separate fact from fad. First, you have to 100% rule out celiac and a wheat allergy. Then, you check that symptoms actually get better on a gluten-free diet. But here's the final, most important step: a double-blind, placebo-controlled challenge. The patient gets identical pills, some have gluten, some are just a placebo, and neither the patient nor the doctor knows which is which. It's a scientific gold standard to prove gluten is the one and only trigger.
Now, while a strict gluten-free diet is the main treatment today, the future actually looks pretty exciting. Researchers are looking at all kinds of new ideas, like using specific probiotics to help the gut heal, or even developing enzyme pills that could one day let people with NCGS break down gluten before it causes any problems.
So what about the woman who started this whole story? Well, for her, getting the right diagnosis was completely life-changing. After years of feeling sick and not knowing why, she finally had an answer and a clear way forward. And a year later, by sticking to that gluten-free diet, she's still totally symptom-free.
This one case is just such a powerful reminder of that deep connection between what we eat, our gut, and even our brain. It shows us that sometimes the answers to our biggest health problems are hiding in plain sight. And it leaves us with one last big question. As our food system keeps changing, how many more health mysteries are just waiting to be discovered, right on our own plates?